I think it was just trying to look at this as a human experience, and all wars are horrible. My name is Randall Maclowry. I'm the producer-director of the Battle of Chosin. It's a story told through primarily the voices of the American veterans during an early seminal battle of the Korean War that was fought in extreme cold weather, winter conditions, one of the most legendary battles in Marine Corps history. One of the main goals was to try to tell the story through the voices of witnesses, the veterans who fought in the battle. And so a lot of the work that we were doing was trying to locate veterans and to talk to them and to hear their stories. We ended up interviewing, I think it was over 25. Taking an individual back into a difficult time and a difficult memory, it's something that does bring up a lot of emotions. And I think several interviews, it was very difficult. The soldier who talked about just sort of dealing with the frozen dead bodies of his fellow Marines and having to pile them up and building this mass grave for them. The one individual, the last name is Baeza, who, was very much just the idea of understanding and being sympathetic about the experience that he went through and understanding that, the individuals, the enemy, quote unquote, that they were fighting were going through that too. And saying that if he ever, met with a Chinese veteran, and that he would have just hugged him as a brother because they shared that same sense of pain and loss. And the other individual who talks about, actually having to basically kind of almost a point blank shoot one of the Chinese soldiers who had been wounded, as he said, wishing he could have known what that person was saying in the last breaths of his life. Those kinds of things really stuck with me. Looking at this battle, it impacted both sides equally. U.S. troops had certain advantages in terms of tanks and certainly air power, and the Chinese had vastly greater numbers of troops. We did at one time think about trying to locate some Chinese veterans living in Taiwan. It just wasn't actually really kind of feasible with our schedule and everything to sort of coordinate that. We also really wanted to, in terms of thinking about the story and why did this happen, and thinking about what MacArthur's actions and his hubris and his arrogance, and not really paying any attention to the intelligence and looking at what was actually happening on the ground. Then also looking at the Chinese and Mao's realization and strategy in dealing with MacArthur, and then also expressing within that, I think there was a sense of racism and prejudice within the soldiers and the military in terms of assumptions about the abilities of the Chinese army and their abilities of the soldiers to fight, and this was going to be a simple, easy war and battle, and that wasn't the case, and that the American troops, they realized they were up against a foe that was much stronger than what they assumed. As we talk about later in the film, that this was the beginnings of really convincing the politicians that they needed to beef up their military, result in things like the military, almost the imperialistic spread of America in terms of the military bases they would have across the world. It's interesting to hear that it has resonated in some capacity with that audience. I think it was just trying to look at this as a human experience, and all wars are horrible, and there's a testament to the human ability, what these men had to go through on both sides. And I'm sure there's similar stories that Chinese veterans would tell about what it was like to be amidst that battle.